Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Away from Home pod. I hope you enjoyed this interview and all the other interviews on our podcast. I hope that it inspires you to take the leap to step away from home. But more importantly, I hope that some of the stories on this podcast are relatable to you. On that note, let's get to the episode. Hello, everybody. Thank you for tuning into the Away from Home pod. Tell you a little bit about myself, why I started this podcast, and hopefully you guys enjoy it. This year, my wife and I have been pretty nomadic. We traveled to different places and met a lot of different people and had some awesome conversation. So, with that, there was a lot of, conversations about people relocating, people finding a new way, people, kind of seeking adventure. So for me, those conversations inspired this podcast. I thought about my life and what, it was like for almost 32 years. I lived in the same building. I lived in New York for a long time. And then, in the last few years, or at least the last 7 years of my life, I've been traveling a lot. And this year, I've been traveling with a little bit more intention. So, with that said, with the intention comes the idea of relocating as well. We decided to, relocate from New York City all the way up to New Paltz. So, that was an adventure in itself. I remember just being very afraid of leaving the comfort of the city. I was so used to it. I was so used to just the noise, just the convenience. So, yeah, with that said, this year was very eye-opening for me. I met a lot of cool people. I've also realized that there was a lot of people in my life that have relocated and made that transition away from home, So as I was learning a lot about myself, I thought about folks who are very singular in the way that they live. So, just being still and being, in their comfort zone for a long time, and the thought of like what goes on through their mind of just like, maybe I'll do this, maybe I won't. So with that said, this podcast, I hope, inspires people. I hope that if you're thinking about relocating, if you're thinking about just leaving to another town, leaving to another city, leaving to another state, leaving to another country, I hope that the stories that are told in this podcast inspire you and encourage you. There's a lot of different reasons why people decide to leave. I've heard stories of love, I've heard stories of job opportunities, I've heard stories of adventure. It is the stories of folks who have decided to leave their comfort zone, people, regular people like you and I, telling their stories, and then again, it has inspired me to take a next adventure in my life with this podcast, and also just thinking about the state of whatever, the political state of the country, and how some folks, just have a very singular mindset when it comes to thought process and accepting of other people. I mean, it happens in my community, and like we are used to just being the same people all the time. And I think that when you talk and you explore, and when you understand why people move and why people choose to make that decision, it opens a little bit of your thought process as far as like accepting other folks. So I hope that, in this process, if you've been in the same spot for a long time and you're thinking about moving, and you're tired of just being still and want to see different people and experience different cultures, you take that leap. But all in all, I think that this is something that should inspire folks. I think this is something that should tell great stories. There's I can summarize it. Some of the best stories I've heard is, people leaving across the world for adventure, the challenges of building community and how people have been really proactive. And most surprisingly, the concept of friendship has been something that has come up often, because every time you relocate, you leave some friends behind or some community behind. But, I have noticed that some folks are pretty intentional now with their friendships. So that's nice to hear, like they tell stories, they catch up, and it's more intentional, it's more deep. And then when they go back home, they kind of pick up where they left. So while you're in your comfort zone, you kind of, you lose the intentionality of friendship. You feel like it's very passive, it's very attainable, it's very easy. But when you leave, you have to be intentional as far as like communicating with people, catching up with folks, and making time for FaceTime, making time to travel when you do travel back home to see those folks. So that is one of the themes that I love. And just, the fact that folks are not afraid to explore and build community wherever they are now, even though there's some challenges. Everybody is pretty open to trying new things and embracing whatever culture or community they're building, in their new place. So, yeah, with that said, I think that, my hope for this podcast is definitely to give people a reason to move away from the comfort zone and inspire people to take that leap. And those two things may be one of the same, but it's important, especially now as some may argue the country is moving in one direction, to hear those stories, to relate to those folks, and yeah, just open up your mind to different cultures, open up your mind to different experiences. Leaving home is challenging, but at the end of the day, it seems to be very rewarding for everybody that has done it and everybody that's been on this podcast. Definitely tune in. I hope that you enjoy these stories. I hope that you all subscribe, like, share. You can follow us on Instagram at AFH underscore pod. So AFH underscore pod on Instagram. And that's where you'll see a lot of those clips. You'll also find us on Spotify, the major podcast distributors like Apple. So make sure that you share with your friends, you subscribe, and you provide feedback. And in the Instagram, you also find a link for folks to sign up to be interviewed. I'm happy to have the conversation with a lot of different folks interested to diversify the folks that are coming on the pod, to, get deeper with folks like that have been forced out of their country rather than voluntarily moved out, and then other folks who are, have traveled all their lives and just thinking about what that means to them. So you'll find the link on Instagram, and you also find us on YouTube and so on and so forth. But I really appreciate you guys listening to this, and I hope that it inspires you to diversify your thought, to take the leap of moving away from home, and that you enjoy these stories and you relate to a lot of these people. So thanks again. And yeah, let's kick things off. Thank you guys for tuning into that episode. I hope you were inspired by that story. And if you were, make sure to share, like, and subscribe to our podcast on your platform of choice. We would really appreciate the help. And if you or anybody wants to be on the pod, make sure to visit our Instagram page where you'll find the link to a Calendly. The Instagram is AFH underscore pod. Again, AFH underscore pod. Please refer somebody. We would love to share their story. And if you can relate to this story and want to be part of our journey, please also schedule a link. Thanks again, and till the next one.